Hey everybody, Colin Duchesne here with Heads Up Plant Protectants, and today we're going to answer another frequently asked question on our product. So today's question is a commonly asked one from growers who are first-time users of Heads Up, and it's what can I expect to find when using Heads Up in soybean fields where I know there's a known white mold issue? As a reminder, Heads Up is a seed treatment. It's a biological seed treatment for white mold, SDS, and Rhizoctonia root rot suppression. There is no such thing as a silver bullet when it comes to these diseases, but Heads Up is another proactive tool growers can use to manage and mitigate the risks of yield loss. So as we delve into it, the answer to the question is that growers can expect to see fewer disease plants, which are measured by disease incidence, meaning if you were to count out 100 plants in the field, how many of the 100 as a percentage were infected with white mold to some degree, and less disease severity, meaning the overall symptomology of the white mold disease is less in those plants that have the Heads Up product in it. Severity is typically measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being white mold symptoms or mycelium, the white cottony fluff that you see with white mold, only on the main stalk, and 5 being total infection. Basically, the plant has rotted out its stalk and has senesced. Here's an example from Iowa State looking at Heads Up and how it lowers the amount of diseased plants per plot when it comes to white mold. So on the right side of the screen, we're looking at a control, meaning it's a soybean with just a fungicide insecticide seed treatment on it, but no Heads Up. And the control is showing 79.6, meaning 80% or just about 80% of the field is showing plants with symptoms of white mold. The Heads Up treated seed is a fungicide insecticide base with Heads Up on it, so a combination. And we're seeing a reduction down to around 36%. So as you can imagine, that's about a 45% decrease in these plots where Heads Up was used versus where Heads Up wasn't used. Iowa State also looked at the number of sclerotia per sample. And that's a big deal because sclerotia is the resting structure or the fruiting body that overwinters in the soil and is the inoculum for white mold in future planting. This is a big deal as farmers worry about sclerotia in their bin or in their seed sample because the beans also have to be cleaned prior to delivery. What we're showing here is on the left is a control, again, a fungicide insecticide only. When they looked at a 2,800 seed sample, they had 8.3 counts of sclerotia versus when they looked at the fungicide insecticide seed sample that had Heads Up included with it, they only noticed 1 sclerotia body in that same 2,800 seed sample. So this shows that Heads Up can help to lower the overall incidence or the number of diseased plants. It also can help to mitigate the amount of sclerotia in your final sample or in your bin. This test was conducted by Iowa State University and Dr. XB Yang. Another trial that we did out of Ontario, Canada, at Bright, Ontario with Black Creek Research showed that when we went from an untreated soybean seed to treated only with Heads Up, we're looking at a 20% reduction in the incidence of white mold. So basically, this is a plot that was laid out, untreated Heads Up, base seed treatment, and base seed treatment plus Heads Up. And as we look at the 4 different entries, which were replicated and randomized 4 times, when we look at the averages of those replications between the untreated which they saw 61% incidence, or 61 out of 100 plants showing some symptomology of white mold. 100 plants in the heads up only counts for 41 plants that were infected with white mold, or 41%. Lastly, when we talk about severity, again, it's usually a disease scale. It can be a percentage, or it can be a rating from 1 to 5, 1 being no white mold and 5 being plant death or senescence due to sclerotia stem rot. What we saw was a reduction from the untreated control. This is from Whitewater, Wisconsin with Agri-Tech Consulting. We saw a reduction in the white mold symptoms and severity going from 19% to 6% when used with a commercial seed treatment and heads up together. So about a 13% reduction in the number of plants that were showing symptoms of white mold. Other comments on the product from growers. What can you expect when you're using heads up for the first time in disease-prone fields that are susceptible to white mold or have a known history of white mold? Growers have commented to us they find that the field is easier to harvest, it has better pod fill, and because it has less sclerotia, less stalk rot going on or stem rot because of the sclerotia, the pods do fill out better. You get better seed size, better test weight, but you also get less dust and less problems when you're going through the field with your combine. As we showed in the last figure, growers have also commented to us they feel there's less sclerotia bodies or the resting structure of white mold showing up in their field sample and going back into the bin. Anecdotally, they also tell us that they feel good about the product because as a seed treatment, if we can reduce the load and the number of these sclerotia bodies, we help to sustain the amount of inoculum that's in the soil when they go back to soybeans in a future rotation. Lastly, I'd like to keep in mind, on top of reducing the incidence and severity of disease with heads up, growers also appreciate the product as a seed treatment because it's no added work for them. It's applied by their seed dealer or their local agronomist working at their co-op through the seed treater, but it is added protection and a sense of assurance if spray timing and application of a foliar fungicide doesn't work out. Say it gets too windy. If you live in South Dakota, it's windy all the time. Sometimes it's very difficult to get out there and spray a foliar fungicide right at the appropriate reproductive stage of the plant's life cycle because the weather just does not cooperate. Heads Up's a great addition because you're getting some added protection right from the get-go. And should something happen where you can't get out there and make that timely foliar application, you still have some coverage from day one. And lastly, and most importantly, the thing that everybody cares about, with Heads Up, you're going to see better yields when white mold is present in your soybeans. Now, here's some examples. This is from 2025, and it's a field of soybeans grown by LD Seeds in Altona, Manitoba. Left side of the field was Heads Up plus a base seed treatment, and right side was just the base seed treatment by itself. Can see on the right side of the screen how this was laid out in strips. So the orange strips were where Heads Up was, and blue was the base. And we could see a clear defining line down the field where Heads Up was used on the left side of the screen versus where it wasn't on the right. White mold was very severe in this field, and it was quite an impressive visual. We were really taken aback by this when we could see down to the row throughout the course of the quarter section, the half that had Heads Up and the half that didn't. This correlated to about a 2 bushel response for the grower. Another example would be in Warroad, Minnesota. And this field got heads up basically across the board, but there was one strip where the farmer purposely left a check. He didn't put heads up in that strip. That strip is identifiable right through the entire field. White mold was quite severe. And again, heads up's not a silver bullet, so we can see pockets of white mold on both sides. The green-yellow color is natural senescence, and the brown is the pockets. But you see that deeper brown strip extend very clearly through the center of the field where that farmer left a test strip that he never applied heads up. So this is a good indicator of what a field may look like when heads up is used versus when heads up is left out of the seed care package. This field had a 5 bushel an acre yield advantage, where we saw 5 bushels less in the strip that never got the heads up seed treatment applied. Lastly, here's a good example in northern Wisconsin. This is close to Green Bay in a town called Denmark. This area has small fields that get high humidity and they get a very thick canopy. You get excellent growth because this is dairy country, USA. And it's high manure, high fertility, everything soybeans love to grow and thrive in, but it also can make rank growth and limit the amount of airflow, which then correlates to seeing more white mold present in your soybeans. This grower had been struggling with white mold in soybeans for several years. And when we approached him with our product, he decided to do his own test run where on the left side of the screen and the far right, he used just a standard fungicide insecticide seed treatment. And to the center mid-right, he used a fungicide insecticide plus heads up. What we're looking at here is a clear line and definition where heads up was used versus where it wasn't used. You can see it in actually the hue and the shade of green in the plants. You can see the plants are deeper green in the heads up treated versus the non-heads up treated. But when white mold set in, it was day and night difference. Late July, early August, we got out to see this grower and took some photos. And from a distance, you can see dark brown patches on the left side and in the far right side of the screen. And that is white mold pockets starting to show. We didn't see those pockets. The plants remained healthy and productive throughout the rest of the growing season. And we didn't see those pockets showing nearly as severe where we treated with heads up on top of his fungicide insecticide base. We always say heads up doesn't add yield. It helps to save yield and mitigate the risk of yield loss. In this case, it was a 7.7 bushel difference that the growers saw as a response of using heads up. Fungicide insecticide plus heads up, 43.9 bushel an acre, and fungicide insecticide only was at 36.2 bushel an acre. So a 7.7 bushel an acre response is quite significant for a seed treatment like heads up, which costs less than a half a bushel per acre. With that, that's the end of our presentation. But if you'd like to see more on heads up for white mold or learn more, visit us at www.headsupst.com or give us a call at 1-866-368-9306.